my goodness, Scorekeepers, welcome back. It is time for another episode of your favorite podcast, The Score, Minnesota Opera's deep dive into opera and classical music and pop culture, coming straight to you from Winter Wonderland once again.
Child.
Twin Cities, Minnesota. I'm done. I need this to be over. But anyway, enough about me. Except my name is Rocky Jones. I'm the EDI director. And as always, I'm here with my two beautiful, lovely, talented co-hosts, our amazing Access and Civic Engagement Manager, Paige Reynolds. Hello, Paige.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back.
And of course, as always, our Vice President of Impact, Lee Bynum. Happy Aquarius season, Lee.
Why, thank you. Nice and weird out.
Yes. What are you going to do this Aquarius season? You got any big plans?
Other than turning a year older, I am probably going to stay indoors and try to be warm, moisturize quite a bit, drink some water, do all of those things, because this dryness going along with this coldness, it is not.
It's not the tea.
It is not.
It's really not. It's really not. But I mean, Paige, you grew up in all of this.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Help us Southerners.
I mean, I think the best Black remedy I know is some good old Vaseline.
Okay.
I distinctly remember my face getting slathered with Vaseline before we went outside. But it got the job done. My partner is he moved from DC. It's been quite an adjustment from like the DC swampiness to the Minnesota dryness. I can tell you he's on a strict regimen of shea butter all over in the morning, shea butter all over at night before bed, and that has seemed to work.
Okay.
So just saying, you just got to be thorough. Yeah. Use the butters, use the oils, don't go out and get the Jergens lotion, whatever.
That's not gonna get it.
Shea butter.
Real, raw. Yep. Believe it or not, in our relatively small 2-bedroom apartment, we're running 5 humidifiers all day, literally 5, because it has been so unbelievably dry. And, I live with the singer, right? So like, there's also like a different set of things that happen. And, we need to protect his larynx because that is part of how we make our money in this house. But yeah, it is, I don't know what to tell you. I've never had to moisturize like 3 times a day.
It's crazy. It really is. Like right now, I'm sitting here with my hand lotion right next to me. I apply it liberally. And as you all know, I live with a native Minnesotan who literally the other day was like, I'm thinking about buying a humidifier for the plants. And I'm like, for the plants? Good God.
What about my skin?
My skin, my beautiful melanated skin. Well, speaking of beautiful melanated skin, we have a big show for you today. We've got the folks from Opera Ritrovata joining us a little bit later. But joining us right now is our new co-worker, well, new-ish colleague. It was so exciting. A couple of weeks ago, we were having a meeting with some artists of the global majority here in town, and they were helping us think through some of the issues surrounding the new space that the Minnesota Opera acquired that will hopefully be opening later this year. And I remember one of them looked at us and they were like, oh my gosh, look at all of this Black leadership at Minnesota Opera. And it was like, absolutely, F yeah. And it's so exciting that we have now a 4th member of our team who is here joining us today. He will be with us for the entire show. And so we just want to introduce everyone to our new Access and Civic Engagement Director, Mr. Samuel Phillips. Welcome to the Score.
Cheers. Cheers. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How are you today?
I'm good. I hear y'all talking about this weather and this shea butter and this cocoa butter, and my skin has not been the happiest being in New Orleans for almost 15 years.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, it's not my skin, my forehead and my elbows, man, it's not the wave right now. But I got shea butter on deck.
Well, we are so excited to have you here, not just on the show, but just here, just in general.
Amen.
And yes, absolutely. And so we just want the people to get to know a little bit more about you. So anything you want to tell us about yourself and, your new position here at the opera?
Right. Man, so who am I? I am son of Earl and Marsha Phillips, born in Boston. I tell people I was born in Boston, raised in Minnesota, but kind of shaped in New Orleans. That's kind of how I view my life. So son of Earl and Marsha Phillips, shout out to mom and dad. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, educator, administrator, live event producer, music producer, kind of all-encompassing freedom of thought, stream of consciousness, professional vibe that I try and set for myself. That's kind of how I look at myself and view myself. And yeah.
And
I know. Well, yes. And
you have one of the all-time great speaking voices. I just wanted to put that out there. At some point, I am also going to go through puberty, and I hope to sound like you on the other side of it.
Oh, me too. God knows.
I think I get it from my mom and kind of her side of the family. Let's just say my voice changed when I was like 11. Yeah, like 11. So I went away to this camp. It happened like this. I went away to camp and for like a week, and then I got back in the car and, picking up the kids and put the bags in the trunk and everything. So I think my mom didn't really hear me and my sister that much. And so we're driving, it was like 2 hours away, and we're driving back, and I started talking, and my mom literally stops the car. She turned around and she goes, "What happened to my son?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "You sound like a man." I was like 11. And it was really weird because I'm a relatively small person, small human, been relatively, short and skinny my whole life. And so I had this full handlebar mustache when I was 12.
Oh my goodness.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Puberty came for your neck. Oh my
God.
God.
It was crazy. It's crazy. But nothing else on my face grew. And for those who can't see me, you're on the radio waves right now, so you can't see I have a beard, but I had a mustache, and my voice was deep, but I was like 4'10", right? and like 90 pounds. So people would look at me like, "Yo, what is it? Who is this kid? Right? He's an alien." Yeah. I would start talking, they would just look at me like, "What?" But cheers. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, one thing that-
absolutely.
One thing that we were talking about the other day that I found really fascinating was that you have a lot of classical music experience,
Right.
And that you used to play the bass.
Yes.
And I really found that story that you told me about when you first learned how to play the bass really, really interesting. And do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, which one of just kind of how it came to me?
Yeah.
I started out on piano in Massachusetts. My family and I, we moved to the Twin Cities in 1997. And 5th grade, 10 years old, they played violin, viola, cello, and I was in the library sitting on the floor. Wasn't too interested in what those had to offer. So I kind of checked out. And Miss Sherber was her name. Shout out Miss Sherber, Cedar Island Elementary, Maple Grove. She plucked the E string, and I was like, "Yo, that's crazy!" Like, I want to play that, and they were like, "Nah, bro, like you're too small." Right, getting back to my original my stature issue, and they're like, "You're too small," and I was like, "Dude, I want to play that." "Well, why don't you play cello?" And I said, I don't want to. And then they said, okay, I think they thought it would be an I got you moment where they were like, okay, well, if you go home and your parents say you can play the bass, then we'll let you do it. Brought the pink slip home, talked to Pop, and he laughed at me. And I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, I really want to do it. And I think they had seen I had already some relatively big success playing piano already and winning some competitions in Boston. So I think they knew that focusing on the musical aspect and technical aspect wouldn't be too much of an issue. So he was like, that stipulation for you playing this instrument is that you carry it. And I was like, bet. They signed a $90 check, went back to school the next day. And they were like, well, we don't have we need to give you a quarter size bass, but you're gonna have to deal with a half size. And I was like, bet. We don't have a quarter. I was like, bet. They gave it to me, and the rest was kind of history. And it just became a full extension of my personhood, full extension of my body. I was telling Rocky that it was the only thing I've ever done in my life where I felt like I didn't have to think about it at all. I would put the bow on the string, and we're talking specifically classical music because I think there's association with, the Black experience or, the African-American experience that, we have proclivities, natural, leanings towards R&B and hip hop, which I got that in my veins too. Don't get it twisted. Right. But the funk is in the DNA. But I think just the classical canon, the Bach and Brahms and like playing with a bow, playing arco, it just came, started out on French bow. And then when they switched me to German bow, it was like a match made in heaven. And I felt very fortunate that I was given the human opportunity to experience life through that lens. It definitely changed how I view myself. And it definitely changed how I view just like people, just like having the opportunity to focus on something so passionately and so clearly. Definitely grateful for that.
May I ask if there are ways that growing up in orchestras has come to shape how you think about the work that you do now in a different part of classical music?
Well, I think playing in an orchestra, but I think also specifically playing the bass is a different thing because the role, the mental process, the perspective you have to have as a bass player is so team oriented, so not about you in any way, right? Like you can be, I know some cocky bass players, I know some people that have a chip on their shoulder, but I'm like, bro, you're playing whole notes and half notes and eighth note rhythms, 16th note rhythms that have to be perfectly in tune, that have to be perfectly in rhythm. And you have to blend with your sound of your section and you have to blend with the orchestra. You are strictly a foundational role and you are there to make other people look good. If you play the bass or the bassoon or tuba or, euphonium, if you're playing contraband or what have you, there's certain instruments where you're not here to be looked at. You're here to support. And not necessarily from a perspective of false humility, right? But it's like you want the best for everybody. You genuinely want everyone to look the best, look the part, to sound good, to feel good. And I think that inherent spirit of collaboration and support has just transferred to every other area of my life, whether it be working on this team and finding ways to communicate and find what people need to get their job done well. While also remaining committed to doing the best work you can to also make sure other people can do their work well. I think 100% that came from playing the bass. And I think having the teachers that I had in the double bass instruction lineage and tradition that was passed down to me, you can go direct line to like Oscar Zimmerman, who, was like a bass pedagogue god in that world. My teachers had direct hands to that tradition. So 100%.
I'm gonna go back to like what you said about New Orleans, like shaping you too. Say some more about that because I love me some Nola. I want to know how did it impact you as a person? Could be musically, professionally, or like in general.
Well, I tell people now I'm more New Orleans than anything. I think just because of the amount of time that I spent down there, I spent 8 years or 9 years in Minnesota, 8 years. 9 years in Massachusetts, 8 years in Minnesota, then, almost 15, in New Orleans. Very formative years. I also, tying it back to the bass, that was when my injury prohibited me from pursuing a further career in the orchestral performance space. So I think, and then also you're looking at, DC is Chocolate City, right? But New Orleans is also known as Chocolate City, right? And there is a certain potency from being around my people that you get in New Orleans that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, the jazz tradition comes from there, the culinary tradition from there, the Mardi Gras Indians, just the spirit and the vibe of the city, and like how the pride that comes along with that, and seeing how people interact with each other. It's the South, but it's not Baton Rouge, it's not Mobile. You know what I'm saying? It's not Jackson. I mean, you know what it is. The poverty line is real. The opportunity gap is real. Like the wealth gap is real, and you see that. And I think having to reshape my mind and like pursuing my passions while also being around a potent Black dominated culture where there was such pride and such lineage and respect for these traditions, and me being in a creative space as well, where there's a certain level of vulnerability you have to be open to new information to change how you are. Like New Orleans was just a place that just shifted everything about me, how I talk, how I think, how I act, how I view the world. Everybody from around the world comes to New Orleans, everyone, because it gives you something. You got people from France, from Bangladesh, from India, from Canada, you know what I'm saying? From Croatia, Serbia. Everyone's like, yo, I got to go to Jazz Fest. I got to go to French Quarter Fest. I got to go to Mardi Gras. I got to just come to see the cemeteries. I got to go see, a second line. I got to go, Super Sunday, St. Joe's, whatever it may be. And you meet all those people. It's just a big melting pot. And the way of the vibe, the city is preserved through that pride. And it teaches you just how to be prideful within yourself, and while also being a part of that community. That communal aspect is also a big thing, because there's so many conversations and so many people in institutions where they're like, we know we have our issues, we know we have like our inner family fighting, but like we want to take care of each other. We want to be like, after Katrina, I got down there right after Katrina, and like the resilience that the people showed to rebuild that city and the education system. You know what I'm saying? Me being a teacher, like being in that space on the front lines, it also teaches you how to just be authentically communal, unapologetically, for the sake of the greater good of the people around you. So
a shout out to New Orleans.
Yo, New Orleans is the man. I'm gonna tell you something, man. New Orleans is the real deal, bro. It's the real deal. I recommend everybody, all the listeners, man, if you can get down there, don't go to Bourbon Street. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't go get you some beignets and just call it a day. Like, interact with human beings that you think represent the true lineage and the culture and the tradition of the city. Go talk to them and ask them to show you around, and they will. And I think you'd come back with your spirit and your whole life changed for the better, for sure.
Are there substantive differences to doing equity work in a context like the Twin Cities relative to New Orleans? Because something that you said that I found so interesting was what the Black community was in New Orleans, how it functioned, and how it's different. And here in the Twin Cities, we also have a vibrant, multicultural population of Black people, but there's also a very different history of being Black here in the Twin Cities. So is there a way that doing this work is different here than it was there?
100%. And I think the first distinction that comes to mind is demographic makeup, right? The percentage of like the cultural breakdown of the city, right? You said, like, we talk about the Twin Cities, New Orleans is one city, right? It's one community. As I said, let's not get it twisted. It's still the South, right? It's still real. Like, you're going to see Black people doing very specific jobs that you won't see white people doing. For instance, like, I came up to Minneapolis and like seeing white garbage truck drivers and white fast food workers. I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, you see it down there, but like, it's not necessarily because people want to be doing this work. It's because, let's keep it real, opportunity is not provided on an equal playing field. So, but that's the main two core, the Black and the white, with some, other populations interspersed here and there. But up here, you have the Hmong, you have the, you have the Latinx, you have Cambodian, you have, Indian, you have white, you have Black, it's like a United Nations all in the space. So I think there's a certain elevated level of cultural nuance and complexity, intentionality that's required to achieve the end result and the end game of the work, whatever your result, your intended result or objective is. To achieve that, it needs to be more universally applicable up here, which is actually what you want to have happen, right? Because intentionality and authenticity is how you achieve real results with people, by building relationship, right? And finding as many ways to deliver your message to as many diverse audiences and diverse people groups as possible only embetters the work that we're doing. It makes us more well-rounded in our thought process, and makes us more community-oriented and community-minded. And I think at a higher level, it elevates the need for like institutional accountability. Not saying that isn't in New Orleans. You still need to do that, because there's still a whole nother history of like French colonization and Creole, what is white passing versus not, like all this stuff is very real. So you have to navigate those spaces down there. It's just a matter of translating the work that, I've learned how to do down there, and collaborating with y'all to make sure that we're achieving that same goal up here. It's just more, I say, more elevated nuance and complexity to achieve what we need to.
One of the reasons I'm really excited to have you here, Samuel, is, our EDI work gets a lot of shine,
Right.
If I do say so myself.
Yo, son, we gotta keep it real, dude. This is all your brainchild, bro. You started this work a minute ago. Come on now, call it what it is. This is all shout to Rocky.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. But also our education programs get a lot of shine. But This is an opportunity for us to shine a light on our access and civic engagement work. And so we've got both you and Paige here. And so I'm really excited to let the people know just some of the exciting things that you all are working on.
Yeah, I feel fortunate, every time I talk to Paige, I tell Lee this, I'm like, yo, Paige is one of the people, that you work with, where you're not really required to think about how to achieve bottom lines and goals, because they're so direct and clear with what they want and how to get the job done. And we had a really great conversation. I think it was right before New Year's Eve, just about us putting our money where our mouths are, right? Like, I just talked about me being in New Orleans. I'm not going to speak for her because, she got a mouthpiece and she can, talk about her experience on her own. But, her being in DC and Whoopty and being like, yo, we come from these places and we're going to get restless if we're not being real about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and to be on a team where we can look in the mirror and be like, we have these goals, but are we doing enough to be equitable, to be accessible, to challenge how we're raising money, to go to places where people actually need this work and need these conversations, like in the prison system, male and female prisons, right? Or, are we elevating underrepresented people in the media the way in which they need to? Are we developing digital content in a way that doesn't put us in the driver's seat, but puts them in the driver's seat? And for us to kind of have that non-negotiable level of accountability and expectation to be like, if we're not meeting these standards within ourselves, then it's probably best if we just stop doing the work. And it was kind of like, I left the conversation at least with being like, all right, dude, like, I'm kind of new to this team. She's been here for a while, but like, I have no doubt in my mind now after this conversation that I got a ride or die next to me that's willing to go above and beyond to get this work done, because we're driven by what the people need, not what we want them to need. And we can go into detail about that work is, and some of the projects that we're working on. But I think that being the foundation, the driver for me, is what I'm most excited about, most passionate, most excited about in working with Paige in the civic engagement department, for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So sweet.
It's real, dude.
For real. I definitely felt that the first time too, because like living in DC for a while and then being from Detroit, like we kind, but we say what we mean and we mean what we say. So like having that understanding. And I think also like, we were talking earlier about the demographics of Minnesota, and a big numbers difference. It's not like there's no models of like successful like Black folks to look at. It's just there's less. So being able to, having been to these places where Black folks are really being able to create more robust niches for ourselves, like just because of like numbers and geographies, histories, all of that. And I think us having an understanding that there's no shortage of Black brilliance in this world. There's no shortage of of like people of color who are brilliant. Like there's people who look like us who, even if in Minnesota we maybe don't see it in the forefront as much, we have an understanding that there's people around us all the time who are just like us, who are trying to solve the problems of our community, who really care, who are interested in arts and culture, who are interested in things like opera too, who care about how the arts can, just be a part of bettering all of our lives. And so like, it's awesome to work with somebody who also, I mean, I don't think anybody on our team has that mindset, but doesn't like have a scarcity mindset about that, who I think I look forward to like the imagination. I feel like we can have quite a bit of imagination, like between the two of us about like what we can, about
what's achievable.
do. Yeah. Like, I mean, to talk about like the specific work, like, Anonymous Lover, we had to pivot a little bit, but
thank you, Miss
I
Omicron.
think the original idea, thank you, Omicron. Thank you, Armarion, for dancing all over our plans.
Poor Omarion. That poor
man. They dragged that man through the dirt.
That dude was so great, such
he
great
really
stuff.
is.
He done found meditation and yoga and stuff, and he's just like, ha, I love the jokes. Keep it light, stay healthy, people. Enjoy yourselves.
For those of you who don't know what that means, Google Omarion Omicron, and that's all we're gonna say.
Yep. But like, I think our original idea for what we had for offstage, we were gonna partner with Alliance Francaise, and I'll let you talk about it more, Samuel, because I just think we're able to get creative in the original conception and just what it's turned into. Right. Like we were able to still do something that I feel like is fresh, is different, and like will help breathe life into Chevalier and the production, and give some more context. But I'll let you talk more about that.
Well, to that, I think it's important to note that I started this role relatively recently, and Paige had begun a really clear plan about having that partnership with Alliance Francaise that she said, to have just like an event where people came and learned about the history and some singing and some song, and just to come hang out. And of course, Omicron, shifted that and required us to, create a virtual format. And that's part of the reason why how this podcast came into inception, and had the great opportunity to, we brainstormed and felt we should do like an Instagram takeover. And we collaborated with the Marcom team here, Minnesota Opera Company, with Essie and Severin. Shout out Essie Slever and Essie and Severin. Those cats, they handle their business, and we're able to create some really cool content to share about Joseph Bologne's life and the history, and the set behind the scenes. And I think to Paige's point about Black excellence in leadership, I think it's a really good opportunity, for us as a department to collaborate and show how well-rounded our skill sets and our offerings are to the broader organization, to the broader community, listeners, to be in charge of doing this Instagram style takeover and social media takeover. And these are very specific skills to have in our current context, where skilled set diversity is key and paramount, and to have people like Frankie on the team and Faye and Paige step up to the plate and brainstorm and put stuff out there for the world to see and create a robust and clearly defined strategic product that is both impactful, insightful, and historically informative in the midst of just like in the undefined, COVID times. You know what I'm saying? Like no one knows what's going to happen, and people was like, yo, we got to pivot, get this job done. and everybody stepped into the plate and swung and hit a home run. And I'm just excited for what the future holds. You know, I think the pivot game was strong, and yeah, appreciate you, Paige. Yeah, I think it's cool. Lee, jump in.
No, I appreciate everybody appreciating everybody. We do have a great team, and shout out to Sarah and Matt and Faye and Frankie and Pablo. Have done some really, really thoughtful work in terms of making concrete these ideas of EDI and how they can be showing up in the operations, the programming, and the art that we're doing.
I'm really happy and thankful to be a part of this team as well. But we have guests.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
We've got guests coming through. So Sam, you want to hang out?
Cheers. Yeah, let's talk.
All right, cool. So we are going to be joined after the break by our friends at Opera Ritrovata. And for those of you who don't know, they are a portable, democratically structured, small opera company that specialize in restoring the works of female composers, women composers, and composers of the global majority that perhaps have been unjustly overlooked or lost to history.
Come on now.
Because it wasn't just all old white men in powdered wigs. There were all sorts of people who have been a part of this art form for centuries, and so they are taking their work and bringing it back to the fore, putting those works back into the canon, making sure that they're being performed and people are hearing them all over the world. Amen. And one of the things that they have done is that they have restored a number of Joseph Bologne's pieces that were previously thought to be lost or what have you. And so we're really excited to have them on as part 2 of our Joseph Bologne extravaganza. And they're going to talk to us all about Joseph Bologne's music, what it's, the process of restoring it, bringing it back to life, and performing it for everyone. So we're really excited to have them here. And stay tuned. We'll be right back with Opera Ritrovata.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us this afternoon, everybody. We have a really, really special set of guests with us today from Ritrovata. We are very excited to have another conversation about Joseph Bologne and the Anonymous Lover. So I will pass things to our co-host Samuel to do the bios.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have you here. So give a little bio, some background information for the people that you're going to be hearing on this wonderful podcast about the Anonymous Lover. We have George Gianopoulos, Nick Gianopoulos. He's a composer based out of Los Angeles, specializing in contemporary instrumental and vocal music. We have Stephen Karr, who's a resident of Long Beach, California, and he is a compelling interpreter of opera and symphonic repertoire. And luckily for him, he's in demand across Southern California as a conductor, organist, pianist, and vocal coach, which is awesome. I need to learn from you and get some tricks of the trade, how to be in demand for the work that I'm doing. So we can touch base offline about that later on. We have From the Dominican Republic, our brother Mishkar Núñez-Fredell, who is a violinist and a historically informed performance specialist and conductor based out of LA as well. And then his wife, who is a concert, who has a career in concert and studio engagements as a violinist, Miss Leila Núñez-Fredell, who has a robust teaching career, teaching classes at Los Angeles Pierce College and the prestigious Colburn School's Music Academy. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we are so glad to have you all. I am so excited to nerd out a little bit about your process, about Bologne, about what it's like to excavate the unsung. But I'll let you get into who you are and exactly what you do. And I'll direct the first question towards Leila. So if you could tell us, who is Opera Ritrovata and how did you come about this particular work of restoring Joseph Bologne, Chevalier de St. George's work?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, and we're so excited to be here today. Opera Ritrovata was founded 4 or 5 years ago, and we're an organization dedicated to finding and performing and promoting works by composers of color and women, works that have been unfairly neglected throughout history. And so we had a number of projects, performing projects to start with around that. And for our first performance, we were interested in the music of Joseph Bologne, who's such an amazing composer. And, we found this manuscript, which had only been performed a couple of times in modern history and only, existed except for the overture as a manuscript. So we worked on performing a couple of the arias from that, and we found there was just so much that needed to be kind of done in order to have a modern performance of that. So we started to do some work on that, and one of our goals was to put those performances on YouTube and make them publicly available to kind of raise awareness about this piece, because it was hard to have any of the actual vocal parts of this piece hadn't really been publicly disseminated. So that's how the project got started, and we're a chamber-sized organization. We try to work in also in a way that's informed by chamber music and very equitable.
Thank you for this. I'll pass it over to Samuel.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that little breakdown. So we've all been doing a lot of research and a lot of, just trying to excavate, historical data and, stories and all the things to kind of inform how we do our work in the impact department for the Anonymous Lover, our part of our public programming and community engagement, and especially COVID-y times, we need to make sure that we're giving our audiences as much information as possible, right? And something that we've been talking about within our team is how alarming and shocking it is that not many people know who Bologne is. Chevalier, he has a bunch of different names, which is a whole nother sidebar conversation, right? Like, who do we call him? What context, if he's in the court with the royalty or what have you? But you want to talk about, I think Mishkar, we mentioned that, kind of direct this question at you, like, who is this man, right? And why, what is your opinion for why he is not part of the broader canon or in conversation when it comes to like Western art music history? Like, why is he not at the forefront?
Yeah, he certainly should be. That's definitely right. But Joseph Bologne was an amazing person, and in many respects, fantastic violinist, fantastic composer, as you already know. Also a fencer, undefeated fencer at the time. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story about him. There's 5 assailants, 5 people came to basically jump him, and he fought them all off, all 5 of them, just by himself. He was a very impressive person. In fact, the president of the United States at the time, John Adams, said that he was the most educated person in Europe, Joseph Bologne. So that's already pretty high praise. But he was born in the Caribbean, and then ended up going to Paris due to some problematic things that happened with his uncle in the island of Guadeloupe, and so ended up in Paris, had an amazing education, and rose pretty quickly because he was just so talented through the ranks. But unfortunately, he also got a job opportunity in Versailles in the court. But there are a few singers who wrote to the king saying they would not work for a mixed race man or a person of color, so that he didn't get the job. But he did, in fact, he was able to get another fantastic job at, I believe, Madame de Montesson, right, Athena? At this opera house, and he was basically concertmaster and music director there for a while. And this is where he also composed The Anonymous Lover. And collaborated with Madame de Genlis, the writer. Later on in his life, Napoleon wanted to was rising to power, and not just wanted to. It was inevitable at that point, and he wanted to bring slavery back, and so Joseph Bologne lost a lot of what his work. A lot of it was destroyed. And he lost a lot of connections, a lot of people. Basically, what you would expect if your life became less valuable to society. So that was a very unfortunate thing, and because of that, the name of Joseph Bologne became just kind of got lost in history. Obviously, very unfairly, very specifically unfairly, due to slavery in this case. So yeah, it was an interesting story this man really had.
Yeah, and if I could just add, even though his legacy was suppressed at the highest level, there was still this interest, and in some ways, his legacy couldn't completely be squashed. And there was a play, a very romantic, somewhat fictionalized, French play that kind of kept his myth going just enough. And he, of course, as a fencer, he's important just in the history of even if he had never been a musician, he would be important just in the history of fencing. It was that, amazing a swordsman.
And as a horseback rider, I understand too.
What?
Right. Well, he was one of the first, I think the first, black regiments in the French Revolution.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so fascinating. It's like he was a mixture between like Barack Obama, like in Neo, right? From the Matrix, right? And
What is it people say? If you invented this character, nobody would believe he had existed.
Yeah, it's right, exactly. He sounds a little fictional.
Yeah,
but
real life.
But he was real.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that goes to the beauty of like what happens when people kind of live to their fullest potential, right? And I think, Lee, you probably have some interesting insight on this. Something it's fascinating. Like you look at Beethoven, even though it was kind of reactive to what was going on at his time, he wrote a symphony honoring in a lot of ways Napoleon, right? And then it's like you also you hear that in Western art music, Baroque symphony, great, huge theme, huge, go Viva la Revolution. But then you have like the other side of the coin, which is like, he might be responsible for the reason why no one knows who this man Bologne is.
Well, and you also know that Beethoven, when Napoleon crowned himself emperor, scratched out that dedication on the manuscript.
You walked it back.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So while we're actually talking a little bit about how we had lost him, I'd love to think a little bit about how we ended up finding him again. By training, I'm an historian of performance. So I've spent a lot of time in archives really trying to piece together the wherefores and whys and hows and whens things were happening in ways that we don't immediately have access to right now. So I'd love it if you could share a little bit about how you restored and excavated this work, right? Like what were the processes, what were the techniques, where did you go geographically, and also how was it funded, right? Because this kind of work isn't free. So I'd be very curious to hear about that, if you could share some of your thoughts, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. This project for me personally was one of the most exhilarating things I've done musically. As a composer, to really dig into the manuscript that was written, nearly 200 years ago, was just such a treat to really look at the handwriting and examine all of the musical processes that Bologne went through to create his only surviving opera. Throughout the process, we determined as a group that the manuscript was actually not in Bologne's handwriting. That was likely done by a script or some other writer. And in that process, there of course were a lot of mistakes in both of the actual notes, the accidentals of what pitches are supposed to be there. So as a group, we spent the beginning of the pandemic remotely discussing this scene by scene, and we have probably hundreds of pages of documentation of us discussing and really digging into each and every note and every phrase of the piece. And even at times, and my colleagues can discuss this as well, piecing in new elements. There was a missing chorus at one point and some missing bass notes, and so that was a really fascinating part of the reconstruction. I don't know if Stephen or Leila or Mishkar can talk about maybe the chorus aspect and how we came about choosing which text to put in that really fit in with the musical material.
Well, so there was a chorus which luckily still has the instrumental parts, so we have something to work with, but the vocal lines were left completely blank.
No text, no music.
Yes, exactly. So we've needed something if that chorus is still going to be able to be, performed. So we went back to the original play that the opera was based on by Madame de Genlis, who's also a fascinating figure. And we kind of tried to figure out a scene that would work. And then Mishkar, you were the one who actually figured out how to fit in the French text to the...
True. We were looking at where the play and the opera, basically where they fit together in the story, and we found this spot where it was very specifically between two things in the music that it looked like this is exactly where this text would have come from. So that's where we took it from the original play that the opera is based on. And so we just basically, after that, we put the music, we moved the music of some of the instruments over to the vocal parts and added that text from the play. And that's how we ended up there.
And there was another instance where there's a major soprano aria that is missing the last two bars.
Right.
Just completely blank. No, again, as with that chorus, no text, no music, nothing. So Mishkar said the word transpose, which is actually what we did with, there was a midpoint phrase that fit very well at that end of the aria. So we transposed that into the key where the music was at that point. And I think we had to extend it by one measure or something, but it was very much Bologne's notes that we brought in to finish off this amazing aria.
There was also a missing bass line in another one where we had to basically come up with what the bass would have done for those 8 bars or so, something.
Thankful for all those theory classes.
we did notate everything, like, so that a modern performer will know exactly what was our addition and what was Bologne. And we also, every time we change an accidental, we have that annotated. So it's in the full score. So we're trying to give as much sort of many tools to the
performers as possible. Yeah. So the conductor will always know whether this note was actually there or we had to do something for that note to be there.
And may I ask, just in terms of the process, were you, beyond your, undergraduate music theory courses, were there other things that were informing specific decisions, right? So did you sit with a lot of his other work to sort of get a sense of where you thought his instincts would take him, or were there other ways that you went about making some of these decisions?
Yeah, both of those things. Yeah, actually, Leila and I played a few of his sonatas together. Of the two violin, he wrote many two violin sonatas. He has a very large body of work, actually. He has symphonies and quartets and sonatas for violin, for two violins, for violin and piano, many things. So he has actually a lot of music. A lot of it also didn't survive. There are reportedly 5 operas he wrote, of which this one is the only one that is now extant. The other ones are just completely lost at this point.
Well, there's a couple pieces, that are surviving
from the opera, but
Right.
not much.
We did spend some time looking at those other, surviving fragments of his work as well, to kind of have some range of comparison, and of course, a knowledge of the style of the period, which was so widespread, which I think is something we're all, very familiar with and have spent a lot of time in that, early classical and later classical style.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost a hallmark of the piece when you're listening to it. It feels like this is very much of the style that I would have heard before, right? There's a way that it feels very, very familiar and very accessible because of that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Lee, you did mention one other thing, and that was about the sort of the funding of this project and how it sort of came about. I think that for Opera Ritrovata, this was really kind of a passion project at first. This is the core mission of the organization, and this was a goal of ours for a long time, is to really dig into this piece and reconstruct it and create an edition that was available to perform for modern players, and we really got a fire under our seats through the LA Opera, which was instrumental in sort of really pushing us to actually sit down and do the work for their production in the fall of 2020.
Actually, James Conlon was involved a little bit in the process as well. For example, one thing that I can recall is the numbering system of the dance suites. He requested that be the specific numbering system, so we went with it. So that came from Conlon. So we had at least a little bit of collaboration with him.
Yeah, and we are very grateful to the LA Opera for
Yes.
giving us the funding to really wrap up the project and make it a reality.
Shout out LA Opera.
Yeah. Shout out to them for real.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, I mean, yes, this is an incredible thing to be excavating historical work, getting to look at something that was written over 200 years ago, and at the same time we have to talk about how it's relevant to now. I mean, obviously you see some way that it's relevant to now, otherwise he wouldn't even be talking about it. So I wonder if you can just get into that, and from a few different perspectives. I think there's how is even the fact that we're just hearing about it, or kind of the trajectory of things being lost and things being uncovered with Bologne's work, how is that relevant to us now? How is the story of the anonymous lover, how's the things that he's talking about in his work, what's influencing his work, how is that relevant now? And I'll pass that to you, Stephen, to answer for us. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the idea of recovering lost treasure is nothing new. We are all looking for ways to preserve and to enhance our experience of what has been in the past, what we've come from, really. And in this case of Bologna as a person, this is a guy who we have evidence spent at least some time under the same roof as Mozart. This is the person who conducted the premieres of the Paris symphonies of Joseph Haydn. This is somebody who is really crucial to the musical life of Paris in the second half of the 18th century. And I don't see. I mean, first of all, if you don't learn about this, then you don't have. There seems to be a missing link in your education, right? If you don't learn about somebody who was this prominent performer in a global city, even at that time, Paris is a global city. People came there from all over the world to experience things. So this is a person who is known by John Adams, by Haydn, by Mozart. We still perform Haydn, we still perform Mozart, right? I I would hesitate to try to count the number of performances of the operas of Mozart that Minnesota Opera has done, right? You will see Mozart on the stage there. So if this person was connected to Mozart in some way and had some influence on him, as some people suggest, I think it's really important to kind of flesh that out and get to know the source, get to know the person. In terms of the text of the opera and the plot, it has a lot of that revolutionary spirit that was going around Paris at the time. You have this woman who is independently wealthy. She controls her own life, and she's being approached by a suitor. I know Minnesota Opera also has this long history of bel canto, and so the audiences there will know very well the Elixir of Love. This was decades before that. And it's the same basic thing, where you have this revolutionary idea of a woman who's deciding what she wants to do with her own life. And she's approached by a suitor who is of lower social rank than her. And she decides that, she loves him and she's going to marry for love, not for status, not for any of this. And I can't really think of anything more modern than somebody who is from a historically weaker population, a historically less empowered population, being the hero of the story and being in charge of her own destiny. I think that is as modern as you can get.
Yeah, and if I could jump in a little bit on that, I mean, I think the themes of the opera, it might not be immediately apparent, sort of the more revolutionary connections, but I think for audiences at that time, the way that the peasants in the story are really held up as sort of models for the aristocrats. And that's something that in the original play is even a little bit more apparent, where there's a peasant who speaks in dialect and gets the last words of the entire play, which was not super typical, for French theater at the time. And also the way that I think the music of Bologne is it's just so important on its own, standing on its own, not being compared to anything else. The way that the instrumental parts are very virtuosic, much more so than, the usual kind of opera parts at this time. As a violinist, I've played a lot of these parts, so it's something that but for him, being a swordsman, there's actually this really deep connection between bow arms in this period and swordsmanship. And so there's these kind of heroic themes that go through the orchestral parts, where Bologne is taking the story of this woman who is independent and making her own choices and kind of bringing all this depth to it, and also using Sturm und Drang and some music that you wouldn't necessarily associate with Galant style, with these really powerful trios and arias which have a kind of opera seria flavor to them as well. So I think that Bologne really brings this power to this story, and there are these choruses which kind of are like putting Leontine, the heroine, in this position of being the aristocrat in these different interesting ways. And of course, Bologne was such a huge figure during his own time. I think sometimes it's easy to forget as a musician. I mean, he was like one of the biggest celebrities. Like, I think Mozart and Haydn would have been jealous of him because of his fame. Like, he was just huge. There's a story about Marie Antoinette going and just to see him ice skate. Like, she just had to go and kind of the queen herself is I need a celebrity.
Yeah, he was a superstar basically. Yeah. It's also striking me that with what you're saying about Anonymous Lover specifically, and about this woman who's empowered, who has control of her own wealth and destiny, it kind of alludes to something that we talk about on this show a lot, is being able to see stories where people of color or just marginalized people in general get to experience joy also, not just telling our stories of our pain or our trauma. And it's important to tell the truth about that. But it's striking me that Bologna was kind of on that wave too of, let's show these folks in some joy or having some sense of empowerment. It's important to have that balance. And that's definitely relevant to us now, and something that marginalized folks of all types are talking about, and just the variety of representation that's available to us. So yeah, thank you. I think that's super relevant.
Preach, Paige. Facts. There were a lot of interesting things that everyone shared over the course of the past few minutes. kind of backtracking a little bit to bring us to our next question, Stephen, you mentioned kind of this standard in the opera industry to highlight, the works of Mozart, which is not necessarily a bad thing. As a bass player myself, playing in pits, so on and so forth, I love that. It's just a chunk. It's beautiful music, right? But Leila, you also bring up a really interesting point about kind of the virtuosic nature of Bologne's work and how, it brings in all these other elements and pieces. And from a social context, and musical context, because I know this is something that is important to you, specifically, Leila, which you mentioned in our pre-production meetings. Why is it important for us to kind of remain like socially committed and culturally committed to excavating historically oppressed works and underrepresented composers? Like, why is that something that we should continue to press forward through passion projects or privately funded or what have you?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's so important. I think that in a lot of sense, we have a really incomplete, in some ways, false understanding of music history. I have been shocked as just, going through and then realizing how many amazing people have been just sort of forgotten about because of the process of the canon, because of the prejudice, in different, in the performing arts world and musicology. There are all these amazing composers, musicians, all these amazing works of art that, could be lost. And then, of course, it's so critical because of, issues of representation and telling, the story and, not making people think that there's this kind of, that it's exclusionary, that music is exclusionary. It's just so important. And, as teaching, I've gotten to see firsthand how much telling, bringing in these types of music, how much it really matters to the students, and how much they respond to hearing, these different composers. Like, I teach at a program where, some of the students, they're coming in with a pretty blank slate to music history. And it's amazing the way they respond to different music, and the way that it's not at all, based on what the canon is, and how, the emotional responses. There's no reason that music that's part of the canon is necessarily more powerful than things that have been left out. So there's all this richness that we are potentially missing, that I think it's just so critical that we, include.
Well, and this is it. It brings to mind for me this thought that somehow music is a finite resource, which is kind of a preposterous idea if you think about it, right? There is room for all of these voices. Like, we're not going to displace Mozart because Minnesota Opera is putting on the Anonymous Lover, right?
Exactly.
You make Mozart richer by putting on the Anonymous Lover. Like, people understand and enjoy it better if they have that interstitial connection, and they see those influences between people, these conversations artistically. And if you suppress it and make it sort of a Mozart was dropped on earth by God kind of thing, I don't know, that really is distasteful to me. I don't like this idea that, Mozart sort of came out of nowhere and was birthed out of the head of his father or something. It's just, it's these legends that remove the so-called canonical composers from their humanity really makes us weaker, I think, as artists and as human beings. Because if we understand the humanity of Mozart, if we understand the humanity of Bologna, and we understand their strengths and their weaknesses, their attributes and their failings, I think we just understand the process of becoming artists and becoming humans much more fully.
Yeah, thank you for that. Right. I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that the folks who are in the canon are in the canon because other people actively made decisions to put them there. Right. And indeed, in the same way, there were decisions made that other things were not canonical at the same time. And I think we're just really grateful for the work that you're doing that really gives us an intervention there that pushes back against the idea that there's something about, the meritocracy that results in who is that we learn and what we learn and what we're exposed to, and even what companies like ours understand is available to produce. Do you have a website or any social media handles that you'd like to share for our audience to check out what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. You can find our website at operaritrovata.org. And of course, we have, a Facebook page and Instagram, all under Opera Ritrovata.
Which is spelled OPERARITROVATA, for those of you who don't speak Italian.
Thank you for that. So everybody go check them out, support what they're doing, both in your participation and with your pocketbooks, and make sure that they know how much we appreciate the work that they're doing, which only adds to our field.
And I'd just like to say for all of us, thank you so much for having us and having this really important conversation and bringing this attention to Bologna.
And thanks to Minnesota Opera for producing it in the first place.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, and we'll be right back after another brief break.
And we are back. Thank you to the fine folks from Opera Ritrovata for being with us. That was a wonderful conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we couldn't leave you without your favorite segment. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly, 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 peanut butter jelly.
That's right. It's
Got
time
you.
for Pure Black Joy. Pure Black Joy, PB&J, a little snack for your soul. This is where we just talk about anything that is for, by, and about Black people that is making us happy at the moment. And I'll go first really quick. I don't know why this affected me so much, but the other day when I opened up the internet and I saw that my Bayesian cousin, Rihanna, was pregnant, it just made me, I started to tear up a little because I was like, good for her. That's so good. And those pictures with her and A$AP Rocky, and they just look so happy and in love. And so I don't know why, because I don't even stan her like that. Like, Beyonce obviously is my I'm a part of the Beehive, but I guess now I'm a part of the Rihanna Navy. And I'm just
She has a Navy?
Yeah, that's our fans, the Rihanna Navy.
Wow.
So that's it. Just shout out to Robin, Rihanna Fenty. Shout out to the island of Barbados and all of its beautiful people. We have a new royal on the way. It's super exciting. So shout out to Rihanna.
Yes, and in case anyone didn't know this, as she's considering baby names, Lee can be the name of a boy or a girl. So,
Yo, facts.
I think a little girl named Rocky could be cute.
Rocky Lee
Oh.
A$AP Fenty. Now that is a cute
Wow.
name.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
It kind of works.
Take notes. Take notes. But who wants to go next?
I will jump in there. My pure Black joy begins with a salute of 2 Black women. First, Quinta Brunson for creating the really fantastic and hilarious new show Abbot Elementary, and then second,
so you got on that.
I got all the way on, binged it last week, and the second goes out to our own Paige Reynolds for turning us on to it. Damien and I are obsessed, like absolutely obsessed with it. We've been like running around quoting it to each other. I do want to say for the world, my mom was an elementary school principal growing up, and the character that Cheryl Lee Ralph plays, who's a kindergarten teacher on the show, just so reminds me of my mom in so many ways. Not the principal, who is the most interesting character on the show, but is also extraordinarily bad at her job. And I know that was not the principal my mom was. But it was such a fun show for the sake of itself, embracing Blackness, embracing all things Philly. I've spent a lot of time in Philly. My husband went to conservatory there, and
I
it's a
love
place that's
Philly.
near.
Oh,
I love Philly, and the
love
show is the
Philly.
Philliest thing I have seen since like the Fresh Prince. So it's I highly recommend it. It's so much fun. Everybody's doing really, really great work on it. And Quinta, if you are listening, we absolutely love you. You have done a huge, huge service by bringing entertainment to Tuesday nights.
Yes, I'm so
Yes.
glad that I could put y'all on. So glad. So if anybody else there, like out there, still needs convincing, watch Abbot Elementary, get your life.
No, I mean, I still haven't caught it yet, but I'm sure given everyone's endorsements, not just the two of you, but just everyone, literally, it seems
All of
like on my
Black Twitter.
timeline, it will probably be my pure Black joy for our next episode. So get ready. But Sam, what about you?
Yeah, similar in the entertainment space. Shout out, I don't know if y'all know who Charles D. King is from Macro Entertainment, did Judas and the Black Messiah, you know, the rest of the squad. I mean, this is the dynamic cat. I've been reading a lot about some of the work that he's been doing lately in this venture capital firm based out of Harlem called Harlem Capital. It's all minority Black run. Man, just shout out to those cats. You know, they inspire me every day. So if y'all don't know about Macro, go check them out, because I think y'all will be pleasantly surprised at some of the movies that they're responsible for financing and producing. Some of your favorite movies and shows on TV right now comes from a Black-owned production company.
Hey.
Go check them out. Macro
Okay.
Media, Charles D. King.
We'll put a link in the show notes and people can go check them out.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, that's exciting. Judas and the Black Messiah was a brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah.
It's complete. And I feel like, I don't want to get, messy, but I feel like how they played Lakeith Stanfield and our boy kind of against each other in the Golden Globes, I didn't really feel too good about that, 'cause they both equally acted at an extremely high level, and to kind of put them against each other in that category was not equitable in my mind.
Yeah. But if it were about the awards, then I see the logic of putting them both in the supporting category, because
I got you.
That leading category might have made it a little harder for Daniel to win. But
it's a different conversation.
Yeah. We are a SAG voting household.
Come on now.
We talk a lot about like the strategies around that. I won't say who we're voting for this year, but a certain lead actress nomination has my RESPECT.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know who you're talking about. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
I was about to say, can we pause this recording?
Ooh, okay, I think I said I didn't have a pure Black joy.
Yeah, you do.
I did think of one.
It made me feel sad when you said you didn't have one. I was like, oh, okay.
I remember that too. I was like, that'd be real sad.
What you got?
I don't know if I've mentioned the Black Film Archive on here.
No.
I don't
I
think
bet
so.
you told me about it though.
I can't believe I haven't.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I can't believe I haven't mentioned it, because the Black Film Archive, first of all, let me start with, it is an archive of films, Black films from, I believe, the late 1800s to like 1970s.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So you can go on the website. There's associated blog to different stories about different movies and actors. For as many of them as possible, they have direct links to where you can watch them, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on streaming channels. Over the holidays, me and my family used it to watch Emperor Jones.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, we got our lives. And I think it came out around September, October of the past year. I also mention it because the creator is a good friend of mine who I
Come on
met my
now.
freshman year of
Oh,
Howard,
okay.
Maya S. Cade. I am so proud of her. Like I could cry. Like I probably
Aw.
have cried a couple times because she's one of those people who, with her work, has just always reflected how much she loves Black people, like how much she loves us. That is one thing I have always known about her. And so for her to share that with the world in this way, and for the world to recognize her brilliance, and for me to know there's a person like her behind this and doing this who truly cares about us, it's just it means the world to me. And shout out to her because the girl, the good sis, is getting magazine profiles, she's getting interviews, she's getting awards, she's getting special awards from like the biggest critics associations. I can't even remember the names because I'm not in film like that, but seriously, like look it up there. She's getting special category awards and for achievement, like stuff that people usually get after a certain point in their career when they've done a lot, like they've been struck, like hidden it for a little bit.
Right, because she's about your age, right?
Oh yeah, we're the same age.
That's extraordinary.
Our birthdays are like 10 days apart, in fact.
Okay, Maya.
Yes, shout out to Maya.
Shout out to Maya. She is so brilliant. I am so proud. And y'all look up the Black Film Archive because it is truly incredible. Like, even if it was someone else who made it, like, I'm glad it was her. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad it was my girl. But I would be amazed either way. So
yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Watch
and
something.
this is like really, this is really fire. And it has all the things that I feel like you're looking for. I don't know about y'all, but there's certain times, specifically when I'm in the studio and I have films on in the background, there's very specific energies and vibes that I look for sometimes, and you can't find them. Like there aren't the key words. And I'm talking specifically Black films, right? There was what's her girl's name? I'm looking at her right now. Jackie Brown.
Oh, Pam Grier.
Yeah. There was a Pam Grier movie that I was looking for the other day, and I just couldn't find it, but I found it on Amazon, right? And I had to pay for it, whatever, to rent it. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly, I don't have to try and search through some hokey doke algorithm to find what I need. It's right here, but it's like every decade. This is amazing. Y'all check this out. This is fire. Shout out Maya.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes as well. Well, that's exciting. Yes.
Thank you, Paige.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Samuel Phillips, for joining us today. I'm sure this will not be the last time. And thank you once again to the fine folks from Opera Ritrovata. We had a wonderful time talking to you, and thank you to all of you listeners out there in cyberspace. We're so thankful that you all come and you listen to us. We'll be back in 2 weeks with part 3 of our Bologna Palooza, and we will be joined by Professor Julian Ledford, who wrote a really fascinating paper on Joseph Bologne and the use of the term Black Mozart to describe him. I don't think anybody would be surprised to learn that we are all anti the idea of calling him the Black Mozart. But we had a really great conversation with him about that, about Joseph Bologne's life. It was really inspiring, really cool. And I think you all are really going to enjoy that conversation. So tune in 2 weeks from now. And I think that's everything other than rate, review, subscribe. 5 stars, please. 5. I'm not interested in any. I don't care about your 1 star, your 3 star. I don't even care about your 4-star reviews. I want 5. And put some words with it, please.
It'll only take you a little minute to do it.
Just a second.
Just a minute.
you know,
For us.
you already like us. Just say that. And, you know, of course, share us with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, what have you, the score at mnopera.org. Send us an email. And I think other than that, we are out.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Thanks again for listening. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye, America. And India.